One of the biggest questions that I get around websites and design and development, those sorts of things, is ultimately what should a lead generation, and most of the websites that I deal with and clients that I deal with, the primary objective is lead generation. So what should a lead generation website really ultimately cost? And unfortunately, a lot of times when we get into this discussion, it's after the client has already spent some money. So they've already invested in some things and probably have not approached it the right frame of reference. So that's the whole intent here, is to really understand, what are we trying to achieve? What is the purpose of this website? And then considering that, what should you invest based on your particular situation? Because there is a wide gamut, and that spectrum of cost of a website are legitimate at all of those ranges, right? At the very low end, there is certainly a use case and situations where you should pay that amount and nothing more, and then probably nothing less at the low end of the spectrum. But at the very high end, there is actually reasons, legitimate reasons, where you should invest at that level in a website. So it's really important to understand where you are in your situation, your goals, and what you're trying to accomplish with your company, your brand, your business, to really assess what you should be spending right now for a website as you go into the market. So let's drill into that a little bit deeper. So everything, first and foremost, starts with your goals, objectives, and your current state. Those really are the three critical components, in my mind, that you should be thinking about as you go into looking for a website and trying to figure out how much you should invest or how much it should cost, and evaluating the person or the agency that you're talking to see if they're giving you the value for your money. So here's the little checklist that I like to go through. One, do you have an established brand? And sometimes this doesn't mean you need to be Coke, right? But it means that you have been probably operating in your market. This could be mortgage, could be a law firm, whatever your business is. You've been operating, you've been doing business, you've been charging customers for products, for services for some period of time. And so there is some understanding, and probably there's at least a small group of people who know your brand name, right? So do you have an established brand? That also probably insinuates that you've already been doing something, right? You have a website and you've done something before, and maybe you're doing something new, right? So that's the first question, is do you have an established brand? Then we want to assess the actual current website, right? So what's the age and condition of that current website? That can also significantly impact what you need to spend. If you have a website, it's on a good platform, it's on something that's familiar to most people, something like a WordPress or something like that, and it's been well maintained, you may be able to iterate on that. You may be able to leverage that initial investment, and you won't have to pay as much. Obviously, you're just going to take it to the next level or expand on that sort of thing. In a lot of cases, though, maybe it's been built on something proprietary. Maybe it's been built on some old technology that hasn't stood the test of time, like things like WordPress. You'll hear me say WordPress because I think that's important. It's probably the best foundation in general for most folks. But it could be on something that, again, hasn't stood the test of time. The other thing that's really big in all cases, and probably the situation that I see the most, just simply not well maintained. Whoever was doing the maintenance, probably not you. You may not understand a lot about what it takes to maintain a website or even that core platform. And whoever you were entrusting that with may not have done the best of job. And it's a hard market to stay in business. So a lot of times we'll see folks that just go out of business, and then all of a sudden you didn't even realize it, but your website stopped getting maintained, right? Or they didn't have the resources to maintain. So that's a really important criteria. The second one, have you done Google Ads or search engine optimization or SEO or content? If you've done some of those advertising and marketing things using your website, there are some things that are probably already there that you want to make sure that you're preserving. So again, that's going to affect the cost, because you've got essentially some intellectual property, you've got an asset there, a marketing asset. You want to make sure you preserve that. That's, again, a really gotcha situation where people will migrate to a new website, not understanding they have all of this value in that previous website. And then last but not least, is your number one goal truly lead generation? I have a lot of folks that come to me. They say, hey, I want leads. I want leads. Lead generation is my number one goal. And then we really get into that design and development phase. And we find out that actually the brand, the aesthetics, those things are really more important to them, or maybe more important to the founder or maybe some leadership. And even though they want leads, they don't understand that sometimes those compete, right? So we really have to understand, is that number one goal lead generation? Okay, let's get really specific about some different tiers and cost levels when you're considering a website. We're just going to go basic, intermediate, and advanced. Basic lead generation site. You're roughly going to be talking about an investment between $1,000 and $5,000. And there's a couple of different ways that you may actually pay for that. It may be a monthly subscription type thing, or it may just be a lump sum to pay for that website. What can you expect from that? You're probably getting a standardized template, meaning that whoever that provider is has done most of the development, and they're probably creating some customization or a sense of customization for you through a standard template. Got some basic forms. Again, we're talking about lead generation. We want some mechanism to capture leads, right? Contact information. We want to describe to people who you are, but we're not going to go over the top. Some basic positioning and that sort of thing. We're not going to spend a lot of content. There's not going to be a lot of user experience here. And then ultimately, in all cases, you need a responsive design. We have found in our data from Kaleidico that 80% of forms, people that are becoming leads, are filled out on the mobile form. So it is a non-negotiable. You have to have a mobile optimized responsive design. And then, so what is this best for? So this particular basic version is best for that initial startup, small business, you're bootstrapping, you need something to get into the market, but you don't just want a brochure, right? You want some lead generation. And again, for $1,000 to $5,000, that should be affordable for a new entrepreneur to get into the market, establish an online presence, and then make sure that everything you're doing around lead generation has a place to come home to and become a lead. Intermediate. We're going to go up that price scale just a little bit. 5,000 to 15,000 is pretty reasonable for that. At this level, sometimes there's different mechanisms to pay for that, which can be helpful. So what do you get here? Here, you're probably expecting a more customized design. We're going to get logos. We're going to make sure our colors are right. We're going to make sure the fonts are right. We'll have some customization within the design. There is also probably some basic lead generation sort of feature sets or user experiences. So if you're talking about mortgage, you should expect to get some landing pages out of this, right, for loan programs. You probably should expect to get a branch page and some loan officer pages and that sort of thing. So you're getting some customizations to your design that are relevant to your particular type of business. You should be integrated. When we capture those leads, you should be integrated with some sort of CRM. You should be on top of a content management system of some sort, right? This is where WordPress comes in. Even that first one, that basic, probably should be on WordPress, but you can get away with some more landing page style platforms. But at this level, you definitely want to start building an asset, right? You want that content management system underneath. And again, I always recommend WordPress. You probably want some advanced forms. You want to be able to progress through that form in multi-parts, right? Multi-part form. Got a lot of different ways that we describe that. Maybe it's a progressive form, survey style form. The basics are you're asking individual questions, and for that, you're going to have different steps to that form. So that gets more advanced. You're also probably going to expect some tracking mechanisms, the ability to put some tracking codes and things in there. You certainly want to have built out category pages, blog pages to allow you to do some SEO optimization. And then, of course, you want your basic analytics integration, right? You want to be able to integrate Google Analytics. So what is this best for? This essentially is best for businesses that probably have been in the market with something, but need to go to the next level, but don't really have the cash and the capital to invest in like completely customized, right? This also is really good for, and this happens a lot and has happened a lot since COVID, where maybe you had more of a retail operation where people would come and see you and you would do more networking and more referrals. And all of a sudden you've been forced online to do direct to consumer. So this is another really where you'll end up in this spot. So I want to pause here before I go to the advanced lead generation to just really talk to you in this intermediate level, because you are going to that next level and you're probably trying to do a little bit more advanced lead generation. Oftentimes in your particular industry or vertical, there is an experienced provider someone like Kaleidico, shameless plug, that already has what I call a cash flow friendly solution and template that will get you 90% of the way to where you need to be. So what I'm saying here is, again, those features, those user experiences have already been developed, and they have templates that will work well and will give that user experience to help those visitors convert. And then essentially all you need to do, or what they can do for you, is get some light branding in there, right? When I say light branding, get your logo in there, get your colors right, get your fonts so it looks like you. It looks a little bit different from others, but it's okay if it's similar because, again, that visitor is probably only looking at your website and maybe a couple others. So your concern over looking like all the others is probably not really valid, right? You're going to look custom in the market. And also within this type of solution, that user experience that's proven to convert is already built in, right? How to get them to convert, how to get those landing pages right, how to do those forms, those multi-port forms, and get them in the right order so that they pull through at a high rate is probably already built out. And then you have sort of that product and content depth already available in that build out that will position you as a credible and trustworthy provider. Again, you're dealing with us, Kaleidico, and something like mortgage or a law firm. We'll have those core pages. We'll have those core loan programs. We'll have those core practice areas. We'll do the capture forms in a way that's proven out, both with organic SEO and PPC. So we've proven the platform. And then we know that we're sitting on top of solid technology platform and maintenance. And then when I say cash flow friendly, the neat thing is that $5,000 to $15,000 that you need to pay for that solution. One, you've got something that you know will work, is proven in the marketplace. You're still going to pay that same number. But when I say cash flow friendly, they probably turn it into a monthly subscription. So for instance, ours, you can get for $250 a month. And so that's really helpful. If you're transitioning, trying to keep, as a founder, as a startup, cash flow is always critically important. So if you can keep it, again, cash flow friendly and not have to, you can put out a little bit of money and start cash flowing that into revenue really fast. So that's an alternative way to secure that intermediate level lead generation website. But there could be situations, and there are legitimate reasons to have an advanced lead generation site. So what are you going to pay here? Anywhere from $15,000 up to $50,000. What are you paying for? And this is where it gets expensive, right? You're paying for a custom design experience. We're probably going through some branding work, some positioning work. We're customizing all the design. We may actually be building the brand alongside of building out this website. We may be taking that brand to a new level. We're making maybe even a unique user experience. Maybe you're going into the market in a new way and you have a new mechanism of taking that customer's information or providing that customer the actual product. You may be integrating, in the case of mortgage, you may be integrating rate tables, again, creating more sophisticated experiences for those visitors. You're going to have advanced forms. You're probably going to have multiple forms. You're going to have custom experiences for all the different loan programs. Maybe you have a custom experience for home equity because that's a different type of customer than you do for purchase or refinance. Or you might have a custom experience for real estate investors and you're doing DSCR. So you're going to have some more advanced experiences for them so that when those visitors come in, they're like, hey, they understand me uniquely because this experience is not just your run-of-the-mill purchase and refinance form. Again, those CRM integrations are going to be really important because these leads, by virtue of you investing in this advanced website, going to be a little bit more expensive, and you're probably going to be dealing with a lot more volume that you are at these other smaller levels. You're going to have the ability to personalize that user experience. We've built situations where maybe you're connected to a loan officer, and that loan officer follows you around and custom helps you through AI or a chat bot and those sorts of things. So you're going to have some of those customized experiences. You're certainly going to be having a more comprehensive SEO strategy built into everything. Your analytics are going to be more sophisticated. And then you're also probably going to be doing PPC or Google ads and Facebook ads. And so again, you're going to have more sophisticated landing pages. So who's this for? This is certainly an established business. This is someone who's made the strategic decision to build out a brand and to create a very important asset to that long-term brand building. And then they have very specific needs in lead generation and conversion optimization. So they're probably doing more media buying, more ad buying. And so that lead has a thinner margin and that conversion rate becomes more and more important. This could even be a lead generator as well. Again, a custom experience where there's more technology and sophistication, and that margin to make a profit on that lead becomes thinner and thinner. And so it's important to get all of these little inches right. Now that you have your kind of line item, your budget amount for your website, you also need to keep in mind that there are some additional costs to consider when you're truly trying to make this website effective for lead generation. First and foremost, and we mentioned this before, you do need to invest in maintenance and updates, right? If you don't make that investment, it will cost you much more when you have to rip all that stuff apart and start all over. A well-maintained and updated website will last you forever. You can just incrementally add on to that. You should not have to do a teardown and do another $30,000 website, right? So this is really important. So what you spend for that, the rule of thumb, anywhere from 10 to 20% of that initial cost per year. Again, because there are updates there, you want to be on premium hosting. There are physically people getting in there and doing things to make sure everything's updated. And then from time to time, that upgrade path is not always perfect with all that custom software that we built on top of it. And a lot of times we'll have to make some development tweaks and adjustments so that we can continue to move up with the platform, probably WordPress, with WordPress. So as it moves up and it changes and it advances, we have to do those little tweaks with our custom code around it just to make sure that you can upgrade and you don't get stuck into something that's going to degrade or become even worse, vulnerable to hackers and those sorts of things. The other piece, and I think a lot of times people forget about this, but even the most beautiful, best website put out on the internet, there's just so much to the internet anymore. No one will come there, right? A website itself does not generate leads, right? You have to do something that attracts and pushes visitors, traffic into that website so that it has the opportunity to see your brand, understand that you can help them, and then ultimately become a lead. So what does that mean? You're going to need some content creation. You're probably going to need some SEO. You're probably going to need some PPC. Content creation, that's actually changing. Normally, I would tell you, hey, anywhere from maybe as low as $100 up to $300 a piece for high quality SEO optimized content. And then you would pay probably somewhere between $3,000 and $5,000 for just SEO and the things that are associated with SEO marketing. So that could be link building, could be press releases, can be things that you're doing with internal linking, creating structure and architecture. Anymore, I've revised that a little bit because it's particularly in the content piece as AI has entered the equation and the competitive market is changing, like how people produce content and what we're competing with to get content into the market. So that's one thing. So with AI, people are being more efficient. And so we're having to do more quantity for that same cost. But the other thing that's happening is Google is literally changing the search engine results page, right? So you have to consider different things. And so sometimes just saying, hey, I want 6 to 10 articles and that's going to get me traffic, it may not work like that anymore. So generally what I'm telling people is you're probably looking for an SEO and content package where you're getting whatever content is necessary and you have an SEO strategist that sort of knows what they're doing and is watching all these things so that everything that you pay for, you're getting maximum value out of. And ultimately for that SEO and content together, you're probably paying somewhere between $3,000 and $5,000 a month to provide that in there. On the PPC side, you're usually looking at someone managing that for you because again, it's become very sophisticated in there. I run an agency. We do PPC and Google Ads. I would be lost in there, right? I have specialist PPC managers in there. So what you're probably looking there is someone who's charging you about $1,000 a month to manage your ads accounts, whether that be Facebook or Google Ads or both. And then you have an additional budget, probably starting somewhere around $2,500 that you're actually paying to Google and Facebook for those clicks. So 2 components to that. So to do a marketing program to support your website, you're probably somewhere between $3,000 and $5,000 a month just to drive visitors to that website. So that's important. And that also may change the tier you're at. You might go for a lower tier just to get some in the market. And I would suggest this and spend most of your marketing budget or reserve most of your marketing budget for the visitor spend, right? Whether that be SEO or PPC. When you're looking at all of this, I have 4 tips for budgeting, right? Things you should be considering. First and foremost, define your goals. This is going to help you. You're going to understand exactly what you're trying to get out of that investment. And so that will put you in the right bucket. And you'll also understand whether or not that particular selection that you made will hit your goals and that you can operate profitably within your constraints of those goals. Choose the right platform. I talked around the edges about content management systems, but ultimately, I really think WordPress in the current environment is really the only selection. There are other platforms. The problem with other platforms, sometimes they're simpler from a user perspective. So we're talking Squarespace and Wix and those sorts of things. But in reality, you're probably going to be operating your business and you're always going to need a professional to operate your website. Thinking that you can just drag and drop things and make something pretty is probably going to underperform substantially for lead generation. So just look for something that's built on WordPress. The advantages there, you can do anything your heart desires. You can start simple, you can get complex, and there are thousands of people who can support you that are highly competent. There's thousands of WordPress developers, there's thousands of WordPress designers. You will always be able to find support, even if you're not happy with your first agency or freelancer selection, right? So you will always be able to get support for that platform. So the right platform. Don't skimp on that user experience, right? So that for lead generation is far more important. User experience, how you've laid out that flow, how you get visitors guided into that lead form or to make that phone call is actually far more important than the aesthetics of the design. And again, a lot of people would probably try to debate me, but if you think about the actual lead generation experience, that being clear and concise and understandable and easy to see without all of the distractions of sometimes beautiful and aesthetic design. Or the other thing that I often see with kind of design first type of websites is people have tried to be creative, and ultimately users on the web are highly conditioned to patterns they see over and over again. So if they know how to use Amazon, they know how to use Instagram, they know how to use Facebook. So those are the kind of patterns that you need on your website, right? Don't try to be creative on how you do a web form or be creative on how you make a button and those sorts of things. Make things that sort of they can like mindlessly understand the pattern and just do what you want them to do. And then, of course, plan for the future. Make sure that you're selecting a platform and that you have an understanding of how you can scale this thing. Or if all of a sudden your visitors just go gangbusters, you get that rocket size growth, that your platform will be able to grow with you without having to tear down investments and start all over. So this is an unusually long video, but it really is that important. Your website is the core, is the hub of everything that you're doing in sales and marketing, and probably is the main investment that's going to make your business grow. So if you've been with me through all of this to this point and want to have a deeper discussion about everything that I've covered in this video, you can reach out to us at Kaleidico.com. There are links in the description so you can find us and we can, again, schedule a discovery, have a deeper discussion. And then, of course, I would love for you to like and subscribe to the channel because we're going to go into a lot of these strategic type decisions and equip you to go into the market and help yourself grow.